I saw a video recently, and I'll maybe like post it in below or make some reference or something if I'm in the mood to do that minimal editing. The crux of the video was basically just like, if you were to get into the comics again from the get-go, what would you want to know, right? You've seen these videos multiple times, maybe if you're on the internet, and I watched this video and I was like, I have opinions. So I'm gonna give you guys my opinions. Um, give you guys my opinions. I made a list, and yeah, so we'll start from there. So it's a little bit different because this is my comic bookshelf, which is actually pretty large. How does this? You can see it goes far up as well as down 5 shelves. Yeah, so let's start off with what's on the top of the list. On the top of the list is issue 24. If I were to restart my comic again, or if you were just getting into comics, issue 24 of X-Men, it came out in 1993, has a beautiful cover, and that's what you should know. That is the first thing that you should know. The first thing you should know if you were starting your comic book journey again. I just pulled this randomly out of my bin. My bin of boxes. Oh, no, you can see some of them over there, right? Right there, a bin of boxes. I just pulled it out recently and read it recently, and yeah, I'm so happy I own it. They're like, this is the OTP, right? And this is just a dynamic pose. It's just a great hug. I just like it a lot, and I think I was like, this should be at the top of the list of things that you should know if you were getting into comics. Now, to get more into it, I also thought this was a great time to do a video, because it is April something. We're getting close. We're like a week or so away from the end of April from the time I'm recording this. And that means we are a week and so many days from Free Comic Book Day, which this year of 2026 is May 2nd. Free Comic Book Day, or Comic Giveaway Day, is the first Saturday in May. And I thought it was really important to have a video but being like, oh yeah, if you're getting into comics, to mention this. If I was getting into comics again, I would know about Free Comic Book Day from the Orange Set. Orange Set. Because this is a great day to get a lot of comics in your collection. It's a great day to get a lot of comics in your collection that you don't, if you had a small collection. Because one, they're giving away comics for free. Two, a lot of comic book stores have deals on Free Comic Book Day, or for just for the regular comics, not just for the other FCBD comics. So I would do that. I also want to mention, like, you make a day out of it. So for me in particular, what I do, and my friends know I do, I go travel to a city beforehand. So I have already picked my city for this year. And I schedule out how many comic book stores. I pick cities with a good amount of comic book stores, in my opinion. And then I just go to every single comic book store in that city. A while back, I did it in New York, and before that, I did it in Chicago. And I just, I just went to as many comic book stores as possible, and I planned it out scheduled because if you know, like, comic book stores will have events on that day, so you might be able to see artists that you particularly like, or like the amount of free comics they can give are different between like in the morning and the day. And so if you schedule it out appropriately, you can have a full entire day, which is being a nerd traveling to other nerd spots, which I find to be really fun. I also want to mention, on Free Comic Book Day, if you, not like me, and you're like, I'm going to go to a city that I'm not relatively near, and hit up as many comic book stores as possible with my friends, and also just go to your regular comic book store. I know in Columbus, in my opinion, Columbus doesn't have that many comic book stores, but of the comic book stores that are there on Free Comic Book Day, they are doing so much. They're literally just doing so much, and it's such an experience to be there the whole entire day. Columbus has a good indie comic scene and zine scene, so just, like, even if you can't hit up every single one, you can make a day of it just staying at your regular local comic book store. for a good amount of hours and just talk. It's an event of talking and community, and I would be like, you should do that. I also wanted to pull out some free comic book store comics out from my bin, but it will be really random because they're not organized in such a way where they're like, oh yeah, this is an FCBD, so that I can show you the logo if I can see something really good. What's the one? Forever's. Oh yes, Marvel Voices. Just showing this to somebody else recently. When I went to New York, which was in 2024, I went to a bunch of comic book stores and I got a bunch of Marvel Voices, and I just gave my extra copies to friends. And I was just talking about that recently to one of my friends, who I'm going to take with me this time when I do FCBD. So a free comic book day will have like this logo that says free comic book day. Sometimes you'll get some without the logo because some publishers, free comic book day is like a publisher, how do you say this? Like they come together and they pay money to get this logo on there. But that doesn't mean like some publishers aren't going to do it. I think this year, 2026, is really interesting because I think this is the first year that I've heard of Webtoons giving out free comics. They're giving out free comics under a different logo than FCBD. They're giving it out under Comics Giveaway Day, which is the same day. It's just a different logo / short, and a different group of publishers coming together for the same idea. Yeah, I would check that out. Actually, Marvel Voices, I was talking about a friend with it because I did think that it made me. I liked how it had interviews in it. I liked how it had interviews in it. I liked it just made me a little bit excited for Marvel. It made me a little bit excited for Marvel. So that is number 2. Number 3. A lot of times people will say something like, buy trade paperbacks because they're cheaper. And I honestly don't think that if I were to start out comics again, this is what I would be thinking. I honestly think instead of saying, oh yeah, you should tell people to buy trade paperbacks because they're cheaper, I think instead you should just build your comic collection with your comic aesthetic in mind. Don't think about basically what I mean is don't think about some cost analysis with your trade paperbacks are cheaper than your issues, but instead think about the aesthetics that you're trying to get. I don't have an example of this. I mean, I don't have any example of this in this comic line. I have some comics downstairs. But it's more that there are like different ways which I want you to think in mind being as you're building your comic collection, right? You're not really building your comic collection being like, oh yeah, I want to get the cheapest for my block. You're building your comic collection because you like comics, right? And the reasons you like comics, and you want to build a collection that just makes you happy to own it. And you'll be happy to own 12 comics. It's just as happy as you to own 50 or 100, or if you're owning 1,000, like there's so many people with their manga, right? And you'll be happy in the way which you'll just have them on your shelf and you'll stare at them and you'll reread them. That is building your comic collection based off of your aesthetic. It has nothing to do with if you have 5 issues or 50 issues or anything like that. It really just has to do with if it's on your shelf, are you happy? On your shelf, are you happy to look at it? And if that's true, then you have won. I'm saying this also because, like, I think it's, like, a mute point, because, like, in the regular booktube space, if we're just talking about booktubers, they're not like, okay, you should get this cheaper version of the same thing, every single time. Like, if I were getting started off again, get this cheaper version. No, you have people saying, oh, I have this really expensive, collector's edition of, I don't know, what's a thing that people like getting collector editions of? I'm thinking of, like, some collector's edition of, like, some Asimov comic, like, Asimov Foundations or something, and you just thought it was pretty, or, like, The Lord of the Rings, and you're like, I really like the binding. That is, in the same way, you deciding between your issues and your trade paperbacks you're doing the same thing, and that should be more important. I'm saying this because, like, for me personally, when I'm thinking of buying issues, a good example of this, in my mind, is, this is basically point 2 on my list under it's point 2 under my list of, like, building your aesthetics in mind, is that, in my opinion, the look, feel, and the content between a trade paperback and an issue are different. And so this, as I said, these are issues, right? Just some floppy one-chapter things, relatively. And this is, we're going to do a trade paperback of Excellence. This is a trade paperback of Excellence. This is volume 1 of Excellence, okay? It's a book. It's a volume, whatever. In the comic industry, we call these trade paperbacks. When you have, let me get you a manga. You would call these volumes. So I use the term interchangeably between trade paperback and volumes, but the issues are just single chapter cells, okay? For the most part. Some issues have 2 chapter cells, depending on them, or they'll be like part 1, part 2, or etc., depending on the publisher and, like, the series. But overall, 1 chapter, you buy the chapter, or you buy the book. I'm gonna say, as I said before, the content, feel, and everything are different between a book and an issue. This is not up, but this is not it. Yes. These are issues from when Viz used to do issues. This is Tenchi Muyo. Okay, guys? This Tenchi Muyo issue is nothing. Has some similarities to the volume, which is... I also have, we're going to be honest, I also have, and they're not here at the moment. But it definitely looks different than the size of which you would have got for a manga, because the Tenchi Muyo manga is relatively the same size as this Identity manga. So this is what I'm talking about, the feel. The feel is different because the sizing could be different between them. In the terms of our normal day comics, the sizing is usually relatively the same, as you can see from here. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they make them bigger, sometimes they make them smaller. But also the feel of the paper is different. And just the side content. Like this comic preview, or this X-Men comic 24, which has such a great cover. It's so great. It's so good. I'm just fangirling over this cover for like this whole entire week. You don't even understand. If you got X-Men, whatever volume 1 is for X-Men, this wouldn't be in volume 1. This is probably like volume 2 or volume 3, right? If you got an X-Men compendium for this, it's not going to have the annoying little Pizza Hut ad. I think it was Domino's or something. It's not going to have the Domino's ad, this Domino's ad in there. That's not going to be in your volume. You're going to miss out on this, okay? This is also part of the content. This is also part of the content. And you might be like, oh, I don't need this Domino's ad, or I don't need the paper that is easier to rip. But it does affect the way that the colors bleed through your comic in comparison between your volumes and the paper quality of your issues. And I think that's pretty important for me, particularly, especially for like certain types of comics. Like, I'm thinking of like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac is my go-to example between a comic where I particularly like the issues better because the paper is of a less quality, and so the heavy ink bleeds through and makes the whole entire comic feel more dirty and grimy, and which I think adds to the aesthetics of this comic about a homicidal maniac in comparison to the volume, which the paper is thicker, and so you don't get the bleed through, the lines seem cleaner, and which I find to be slightly annoying. So basically under this statement, part of number 3 being, should you buy the trade paperbacks or the issues? Don't care about it. Trade paperbacks because they're cheaper is not the question. The question is, what aesthetics is pleasing to you? Is it just the aesthetics of having a bunch of volumes on your shelf? That's fine too. Is it having a particular types of content in your comic in between, that could also be important. It could just be like the literal way of the coloring being different between when they're put as volume versus as its original issue run. You also just have to understand, and I would say this first, if you were getting new into comics, which is also important. If you really love something, if you really like a comic and interested in it, the pre-orders and the issues are more likely to allow that particular story, in at least within the U.S. industry, to have a longer run. So maybe that's in your mind, like, oh, I would like to support the author more. That's part of my like aesthetic appeal, the core, which I am. Then go buy your issues. Go pre-order. It's not. Is it cheaper or not? The question should never be, is it cheaper or not? Because if you're making a comic book collection, your comic collection will take years to grow, right? So just chill. Just chill. This took me years to just collect these. So just be like, yo, this would have made me the most happy having this at this moment, and you should just go buy it if you have the disposable income to buy it. Okay, so now point 4, after I just did this like whole entire monologue for part 3, point 4 might be like, oh, this is so contrary. Point 3, buy used comics. Like, my point 4 is buy used comics. I have so many library copies of comics, so there's like a library copy of Monstrous here, there's a library copy of, I think, Savor, a bunch of manga up there. Library copies are great buys, but also just used comics in general. I recently, I feel like it's been like so long ago, I recently bought a copy of Boys B, which was used, and it was in great quality. Some of my used comics aren't as in good quality as others, so like, where is it? It's probably, I don't know. I don't want to get up. I just kind of... Let's see. Is it... No. Yeah. It's right here. I knew it was right here. It's so an annoyance. Okay. This is a used copy of Blue is the Warmest Color. You can see that it's got like some stickers that I haven't taken off yet. So when buying a used copy, you might be like, oh yeah, I don't want stickers or anything. And there are ways to take these off, but it does depend on like the paper and the coloring. My usual thing is, if I'm not giving it to someone else, I'm not going to take it off, because it's just a lot of work. But it's definitely a thing, and you might want to be a little bit selective on your used copies. I think if you're going to buy used, just buy it, and then you'll have a better understanding of what the actual price is. There are websites to actually get a better understanding of the price. I say Blue is the Warmest Color because this was one of the worst used buys that I bought. Not because of the content, the thing, but because somebody was using this for like a homework assignment, and they left their assignment in, and they have marginalia all over their comic, all over this comic, like not even on the side, but like within the actual panels, which I find to be really annoying. But besides that, buy used comics. If you buy used comics, your collection will grow really large. I will say that if you buy used issues, I have some used issues at the bin, it can be just as expensive as buying an issue new. Oftentimes, some places overcharge you or charge you the same price as if they were new, which is just really annoying. Well, you can get better deals of used trade paperbacks where they are actually less than when they were new. So those are things that I would mention. The other thing that number 5 on my list is check comics out at your local library. Which this is why I couldn't show Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, because even though I have the issues of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac in my bin, I don't have all the issues, and I did actually read most of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, like all of it really, because I read the volumes over again and reread. I'll say I read all of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac, even though some of it was a reread, through my local library. Not my current local library, but through a local library. And so I also read I Hate Fairyland, through my local library, as well as like Saga or whatever, and I think it's really important that you just check out the books from your local library. Now, the idea of checking out your comic books from a local library, it can be a little bit hard or a doozy, in a sense, like, one of my local libraries will have comic books, but only have what I call, like, New York Times style comic books, which not that they're bad, like, they're not bad in any way, it's just me, personally, I don't really want Mouse in my collection. I don't want Mouse in my collection, not really that person. I can't remember the queer book that was talked about a lot that my trans friends really liked. I don't really need that in my collection either. It's like a biography. Why would, me personally, I'm not really the type to be like, oh, I want a biography comic. So those are things that aren't really my style, right? To give some idea. But they're still great comics, and if you really like comics, you want to read them, right? And so going to your library and checking them out is a good alternative. I'm saying this because your library might be the type of library, one of my libraries, local libraries, as said, has a lot of these, what I titled New York Times types of comic books. Another of my libraries has a very large collection of manga. Large collection of manga. Which is great, in a sense. You know, it's an either-or situation. And so if you go to your local library, it might not exactly have the comics that you're used to reading or that you really want to read, that you want to own, but because of the library, you can just, you can just get a taste of what the other genre is, which is also a benefit. Then I also want to mention, when you go to your local library, you can do an interlibrary loan. You can do an interlibrary loan for comics. Your local library is not really going to do an interlibrary loan for issues, but you can definitely do an interlibrary loan for, a manga that you really like, for any of those New York Times types of things. If you haven't read a Nick Drane, so I have no idea if that's how you pronounce his last name. You can read one now. Haven't read an NBM comic or Abrams? You can read one now. Like, you can just do an interlibrary loan, you fill out a form, you say the name of the comic, and they will send you a comic from a different library, not even in your library system, which is a benefit for you if you really like comics. And this is your way of saving money on your comics, because really what you want to do is read more comics, right? It's not just the comics you own, so you want to be able to read a lot of comics to be able to select the comics that you think are best for your comic book aesthetic. Okay, then my next point, which I think is the most important point that people don't talk about when they say, oh yeah, we're going to collect some comics. I think that in your comic book collection, you should not be just collecting comics, okay? Which is, might be something of argument, but I don't think you should just be collecting comics. I already pre-pulled this out. This is the Love and Rockets art book, the Hernandez brothers that Fantagraphics put out. It is just an art book of, like, sketches that they did, as well as, like, some other drawings that they did. The Hernandez brothers. If you haven't read Love and Rockets, you should read Love and Rockets. You should have an art book in your collection. If you really like the artist, if there's a Marvel artist you particularly like, they, from the Golden Age or Silver Age, they probably have an art book that maybe you should acquire, right? You should get it in your collection. It will be to your benefit, and you'll like it. Like, if you like the art, you'll like the art, right? I also say get reviews and mags, right? When I say reviews and mags, I'm thinking about Bubbles. Thinking about Bubbles or the Comics Journal. You should really get Bubbles. You should ask your local comic book store to get you some Bubbles. Bubbles is great. I think Bubbles is better than TCJ right now, in my honest opinion. TCJ is a long-running comic book magazine or in comics. It's just a magazine or in comics. Just like this book is a book or in Muslim comics. It's not a comic book. It's just a book or in comics. We'll have reviews. I talk about, like, the drawing styles. We'll talk about who the authors are and what's important to it, and just, like, some new comics that you didn't hear about yet, or stuff like that. I think those are, if you like comic books, you should just have these in your collection. The collection might not be full of them, but to have a couple is a couple of happiness and joys. Then I also want to make mention of, like, zines. I think zines are different than the zines. I put all these zines in a bag. Sorry. This is a good example. This is also a zine. Okay, you haven't had it. This is a very well-known zine. But I put a bunch of zines in a bag. So this is a better look at it. Let's see. This is a zine. I think I didn't like this zine. Yeah, I didn't. So I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to do that one. Let's do this one because I think this one's cute. This is Bits and Pieces. It's a tiny zine. I think I got this one in Columbus. It's a tiny zine. The first page looks like this. It has the back printed by I have no idea. I think it's Phoebe C. It's September 2019. It says got punks on the back. You should get some zines. Zines are like tiny comics or like tiny magazines or like they're like tiny art books like made independently. And if you're into comics, you should get zines. And I'm saying this because especially in the 90s is a more thing than now. A lot of some comic book artists come from the zine community. And so my thing of being like, oh, you should get art books or oh, you should get reviews is really it's like, okay, have a better understanding of like where these artists and authors and mangaka and publishers are coming from a U.S. perspective, or even from a non-U.S. perspective, because you have zines in other languages as well. It's in other languages as well. So I think this one was cute. And then the other one that I mentioned on my list for like things to add to your comic book collection that aren't comics are our last two. The penultimate is figurines. I don't really have any figurines on my shelf because I realized pretty earlier in my life I don't really care about figurines. But if you like figurines and they make you happy, then yeah, go for it. Like if you could get a Marvel figurine of like, I don't know, Gambit and Rogue together. I don't know if that's a thing, but if that was a thing, that would be amazing. Maybe I would get it. And Rogue together. And you put it on your shelf next to your Marvel X-Men, it would make sense. Or maybe there's a particular design of Spider-Man that you like, and so you want that one, or The Walking Dead, or etc., or Teshimiyu, or whatever, like Sailor Moon or something, right? These are things that you can add to your comic book collection, and they're not comics, but they show your appreciation for the artists, they show your appreciation for the community and the fandom, and I think you should just add them. These are things that you should add. The last one in this, maybe you should add it, is, I was thinking about this recently, is tabletop RPG books. I put all my tabletop RPG books at the bottom of my comic book collection, so you can't really see it, because this is second shelf from the bottom, but underneath it, you'll see my books or in games section. And I will say that I think they're also like art books. I do have to say that tabletop RPG artists don't usually make comics. They don't usually do that later on. Like, they're not like saying, okay, I'm going to make a comic book yet. But if you're buying art books in the same sense, I think this is a great picture. Then you might as well just be like, oh yeah, these are also art books. I do think that some of them are in the zines, in the zine community, though their zines look different. Like Mothership. This is not the one I wanted to pull. Anyway, Mothership has a good zine community. This is like an actual book, but. And so you might be like, oh yeah, I think that's cool. As you get into zines, you might be like, oh yeah, games with zines are cool. So that is the section of add more than just comic books to your comic book collection, and that would be nice. My seventh point was to slab or not to slab, to bag or not to bag. I think if I were getting new into comics, the idea of slabbing or not slabbing is something that's talked about a lot, and so I just thought I would mention it. I do not slab my comics. Slabbing, and I don't have any example of slab comics in my collection at this moment. But to slab a comic is basically to put mostly it's done with issues. This is these things. It's mostly done with issues, but you can also do it with volumes. And it's like this plastic container that you have gotten, where you send off your comic to a company to rate your comic, and then they'll put it in a plastic container for protection. And that if you open it, then the rating is no longer a thing, and you're supposed to open it and you're supposed to keep it in this protection thing forever for resale value, or just for like this idea that you really value it so much that you're not going to read it. My opinion on slabbing is that you probably shouldn't slab your comics, and you probably should just bag them. I'm bagging my zines here, but bagging, or otherwise known as sleeving, this is a sleeve comic, the Forevers, right? In my honest opinion, I don't sleeve all my issues. I sleeve my zines because zines are in weird shapes, but I just put them in this particular bag, for the most part. And that's enough protection for me, really. The reason why you might sleeve or bag, I'm using these terms interchangeably, your comics is a way for protection more than a way for its resale value. Like, I'm just trying to protect it and keep it in good quality. I would recommend sleeving anything that you got signed, if you're not going to slab it. I think, in the most part, you probably want to protect something that you got signed, or maybe protect something that you really like. But that's it's in the opinion of, like, should you do it? I would also mention in this idea of slabbing that if I was new to the comics community and I was thinking about slabbing my comics, I would also want someone to say, like, that people who slab your comics are crooks. They're crooks, okay? I would want somebody to say that. I'm not going to go really into it, but if I was new into comics and I was thinking about it, I would want somebody to say, oh, they're crooks, and you should maybe do a Google search. They do a good search. My number 8 on here is another way of protecting your comics, which is having a box for your issues, which is what this box is. It's a box for my issues. I have 2 boxes for my issues over here. And getting a box for your issues and, like, where you can get them. I got these boxes from a local comic book store. I just called them up beforehand, before you're going in, and say, yo, do you have any boxes? What's the price? And then I called up another local comic book store, and I asked the same question. They gave me a different price, and I just went with a cheaper one. These boxes are cardboard boxes. You can also get plastic boxes, and some other sized boxes. These sizes are particularly good sizes for issues, but they're not really good sizes for magazines. So I have a lot of magazines and, like, slightly odd shapes in this box, and then, like, issues that are appropriately shaped in this box. But those are things that I would want to know, and stuff like that. If you are worried about, like, water damage in your home or something like that, I would recommend getting plastic boxes, and so you can just, like, get them from, like, some type of online store, or call your LCS. They might have those. The cardboard boxes you're more likely to get from free for your LCS are, like, really cheap, because they are probably have a bunch of them just left over. So at the right point, after FCBD for comic book day, call your local LCS and be like, yo, I want a box. You can probably get a good deal. So what I would want to know, if I was getting new in the comics, where to get these boxes. I remember being like, I don't know what to do, and I want some of these. I have too many issues. My 9th point is online comics. I think a lot of people, when we're talking about, oh yeah, you're gathering your comic collection, don't also talk about there's a whole entire field of online comics that exist, of different various items and qualities, and you should just explore those too. I said, go check it out at the library. So So this idea of like, do I need to own every single comic I read? You don't. And in the same way, since I believe that you don't need to own every single comic you read, you might as well just be reading some online comics. Some good online comics that I remember reading when I was younger. I remember reading Steve Lichman, which are these two, on Spastic, when it was called Spastic, and then I bought the volumes. And I think the volumes were greatly... I think they spent some good money on like the design of their little comic story. I also have like Crumbs. I have Gunner Kid Court. I think all of these right here are comics that I read online at first. So eventually maybe you'll go buy it when they do it in print, or maybe you won't. But it doesn't really matter. Like online comics are a great way to go read your comics and then decide if you're going to buy them later, or keep them in mind. Like, have you read McNinja? Did you know McNinja has that? You should just read McNinja online. You should read McNinja online, and then if we all read McNinja online again, then maybe there will be another run of publishing for McNinja, and then I'll be able to grab a copy of McNinja trade paperback, which is what I want, which I should have bought like 10 years. It's probably like 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, I should have bought it then, and I didn't buy it because I was too broke. And we all go read Big Ninja after watching this, and then we all say we need another print run. Would make me really happy. So yeah. My number 10, so we're almost done, is cons, fan spaces, and communities. I wanted to mention, like, there are many different types of cons, right? And as you're buying your comics and you're deciding, oh yeah, I actually really like this. I think also part of the comic community, there's like this idea that you should go to cons, which is very different than in like just any other booktube space where nobody's like, oh yeah, I read a lot of romance books, so I'm gonna go to a con. But in the comic community, that's like a really big thing. So one thing, I think it's fine if you don't. It's fine if you don't go to a con and you never go to a con. This is fine. But because it's such a big part, you should probably go to a con. You should experience it once, right? And on this idea of experiencing it once, I'm going to say go to your local con. Go to your local con, go to a library con, go to your town's con, go to a fan con, or whatever. I think you don't need to spend the hundreds or so dollars to get into one of the bigger cons or to drive to a bigger con. That's an experience and that's great, but your local con you'll also have a lot of fun with too. Like no dip. Then yeah. So that was one of the points I wanted to say. There's also just community online, so you can do that. You can go to like zine making places where you guys all collectively make zines together, and then you'll see artists that you'll be like, oh yeah, you're dope. You can trade zines with people. Even if you didn't make the zines, if you collect a lot of zines, you can start shipping out your zines to other people to get their zines. It's a real thing. And those are all things of making community. Just being a nice person goes a long way. Then number 11, my number 11 is a slightly contentious point, but I think if you were to get new in the comics, you should just zone in on this. You don't need to start at issue 1. You don't need to start at chapter 1. That would be crazy. There are hundreds and hundreds of chapters to just Batman, right? To Spider-Man, to the X-Men. And if you were like, oh yeah, I need to start at issue 1. Issue 1 of what? Post, pre, Golden Age, Silver Age? What? Issue 1 of what? Like, that would be crazy. Just pick up a comic and just start reading, and it's completely and utterly fine. Even if you started right in the middle, or an issue, or volume 24 of Naruto, and that's the only volume of Naruto you had, like, you would still have a lot of fun reading Naruto at volume 24. No dip. There's like no doubt about that. And then you read volume 25, 26, 27, and then you decide to go back, and you have a better understanding of the trajectory of what the growth was leading to versus now, you would still like it. Like it's still good. So you don't need to be a first issue buyer. You don't only need the first issues. And you don't need to be a completionist. You just have to really like comics, and you'll really like comics if you started at the wrong issue or started reading it backwards. You'll still really like comics. There's really a lot to appreciate. Okay, those are my 11 points. Didn't really need to see my face. I should have just like shown you guys like these kind of things over and over again, but I didn't super prepare and I was kind of lazy. Oh, some other points that I just thought about just recently that like this is not a good example of that, but I have this is bleach. We'll just take these out. It's gonna have to put these in. It's gonna be slightly annoying. So this is what we're ending with in terms of like I said you're like making your aesthetics, making yourself be part of your aesthetics. This is full tonight in English. This is full night in Spanish. This is a IVREA a publishing of it. IVREA I think is Argentina. I can't remember. And then, right, and the sizes are, like, totally different. Totally different. And the translations are, like, slightly different between these two, English and the Spanish one. And I'm mentioning this because this is also just a part of the aesthetic. This is also part of this. You can rebuy something you already own in a different language. You can rebuy something you already own in, like, a specialty edition, which is the part of the idea of buying issues versus buying trade paperbacks. It's totally and utterly fine, and this is like growing your aesthetic. The amount of Spanish manga volumes I have is pretty puny, but of the ones I have, I selected them for a purpose, being like, well, you know, if I had this one, would I be happy with it? And honestly, Bleach is kind of easy to read in Spanish, so it's kind of easy. Read in Spanish. This is kind of annoying to read in Spanish. This is the Panty manga. I think is the Mexico publisher. Can't remember. It could have been Spain, but I think Spain's the other one. Sorry, manga publisher. So go get manga in different language if you can, or just like get comics in different languages, just like with the zines things. Because it would be fun. It's fun. I think it's fun. You might not think that's fun, and you might be like, oh yeah, the art books. Yeah, I totally can get behind that one, or the figurines. Behind that one, but I have been doing this recently. I mean, it's not even like I've been doing this recently. I've been doing it recently for manga, particularly just buying manga that I haven't read in English, or manga that I've already read in English. I have some comics, like Black Sad, that are like originally in Spanish, are originally by authors who speak Spanish as their first language. And I have been buying those for a while, but it's only recently that I was like, oh, I can buy manga in Spanish? Oh, I can buy manga in Spanish? What? I'm definitely going to buy manga in Spanish. I think After God's kind of weird, if I'm going to be honest. So, like, I'm putting it up here, but I did think, like, I do think that, Panini, I think it's Panini who did this one, yeah. I think it's cool that they gave me a bookmark. Like, I've never gotten a bookmark. I also think it's cool that they bag them. And they bag. I take if you're giving me a volume in a bag, I'm gonna take it out of the bag and I'm gonna throw away the bag. I don't need that. I don't need that. But I did think it was cool that they individually bagged each of them. I thought that was cool. I thought it was cool that it has the sleeve cover. But if you got it in America, this is printed on the top, and I just thought it was very interesting. I'm of the opinion that I think sleeve covers are cool, but I also do think that I would have it rather printed on the top of my comic instead of it be sleeved, but I thought it was cool and I thought that was interesting. And I did wonder why they did that for this one, but not for Bleach. Questionable. But that's it for me. Yeah, if you saw a comic that you were like, oh yeah, you definitely needed to talk about, but you didn't talk about it at all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't use it as a reference. I literally just pulled these out at random. If you could not tell, unless, whatever. So that's about it. The 11 things you need to know, with some of them having multiple parts. Multiple parts. And yeah, have a good one. Have a good night. Yeah.